Paul, welcome and thank you for letting me do this interview and torment you with lots and lots of questions about your game development experience. Should we start off by you just telling us a bit about yourself and what kind of led you into this path of game development and computers?
Well, I think it kind of all started with the VIC-20, actually. I was out camping when I was 12 and came home and sat in the living room table was a VIC-20 my parents had bought me. That really was the kind of the pivotal point where, this is what, it's got to be 82. Computers were very new. I had friends with Spectrums and, I'd heard of the VIC-20 and thought, great, that's kind of the thing that I wanted. It looked a little bit more solid than a little specky. The first thing I wanted to do was code. The first thing I typed in was, draw me a circle, 12-year-old kind of going, go on, draw me a circle. And the computer's going, syntax error, no idea. So from there, it's like, why don't you know these things? So, picked up the book, and then started to learn how to code and did a very bit of basic, outgrew basic within weeks. Kind of like, okay, I've done that one. What's next? Started to pick up machine code and, poking all over the place and going, great, this is great. Really, the wealth that it kind of gave me in new frontiers. I just wanted to learn more. And from there, if I'm trying to do my own games, typing in a lot of data statements from various magazines, and it went wrong. And you find that somewhere along the line it should have been a 3, and someone's typed in an 8 in the what, and so reverse engineering all of these typed in pieces of code and going, well, what should it do, and kind of go and actually understanding and being able to go, I know where it's broken, and it's not just the 3 should be an 8. The load accumulator should actually be load X. Fixing that, feeling very chuffed with myself and thinking, what's next? And then kind of doing this and kind of going, well, I should be able to draw my own graphics. I need some graphics. And so started to draw my own graphics. And then, you've got that choice of, well, which way do I go? Do I do coding? Do I do art? And for quite a while, kind of did a bit of both. Now, there's plenty of coders out there who are so much better than me at coding, and there's plenty of artists that's so much better at art. But I found myself in a kind of a niche spot where I was good enough in code and good enough in art to have that kind of soft spot and being able to talk between people. And that's stood me through through all of my career, through games, now into corporate world where I kind of sit in corporate world, and being able to talk to from the coders to the artists to the designers to then further up the chain and kind of talking, corporate speak, when corporates are after bottom line, when will it be ready? How much profit will we make? Quite early on in, games development was, not 2 years, 100 people. It was 2 months, 1 person or 2 people in a bedroom.
Yeah.
And so being able to make that choice really, really quickly, Christmas doesn't move, you're doing a Christmas game, Christmas doesn't move. So you've got to go, I can't get that to work. What can I do to put it in a box? And so I learned very, very quickly about how to put things in a box.
Did you have any art package or something like that on the VIC-20, or did you just start working with the pixel graphics straight away in BASIC? Or
no. So on the VIC-20 world, data statements, an awful lot of data statements, but preceded by graph paper. From there, learning about double pixels, nibbles, and that you can get your 4 colors, and then from there in the box, moving through onto the 64. So I went from VIC-20 very quickly. I'm done with VIC. What's next? And so, learned 6502, 6510, very, very similar instruction set. So slipping into the 64 and having sprites was brilliant. From there, it was Steve Beats's sprite editor was the first kind of thing I used.
Was that commercial or just?
I can't remember. but the name sticks. And another package, Vidcom, for drawing backgrounds. Only the problem with Vidcom, it was horrible. It was kind of like pen down, mover, pen up, a bit like Turtle. And the biggest problem was with Vidcom was it made a sound. So when you had this pen selected or that color selected, it was like beep, boop, beep, beep, beep. And it was just arg. And even with, no monitors back then, obviously everything was done on a TV. You turn the TV sound down as far as it will go. And I could still just hear it. Because I started doing commercial work when I was at school. I would come home from school, boot open the 60. I did my first Knights games. I did the Commodore 64 and Amstrad loading screen. So, 64, I then kind of went Amstrad. I got the Speccy, so I had all of them. So I could do, I'd do one screen on that and then copy it on each of the different devices.
How did you manage to transfer the data between the machines?
Pardon? No. You did two screens, copy. Yeah, and it wasn't until I got an Amiga that essentially I used the Amiga to draw graphics for all machines. Up to that point, you wanted graphics on a 64, you drew on the 64. You wanted them on an Amstrad, you drew on the Amstrad. Saved it to whatever, 3.5-inch floppy, 3-inch floppy tape, pushed it off to the developer.
So you had like 3 different machines at home. How did your friends feel about that? That guy's got 3 computers. I've hardly got one.
Well, some of the people that I knew, they didn't care. They weren't into computers. There was a handful of them that were. And then when I would say, oh, yeah, see that game? I did the graphics. They're like, don't believe you. They couldn't equate me. And I was like, look, here. And they're like, no, it's a different Paul Walker or it's a different whatever. And so there was no traction for, me having Playground Cache as a, superstar. No, none of that. I was just like everybody else. So, we had lessons at school. So we had, I can't remember a research machine. That was it. It started with a key. And I think I was third year. So whatever it is in new money, year 9 for putting on a UK. And they had BBC micros. And, I wrote a stock control program in machine code on that. And my teacher she just did not know what to do with me. There was, people knew that, everybody came to me for homework, how do you do this? At school, my first programming was punch cards. Yes, I am that old. The Cleveland County Computer Center, you would get some punch cards and you would write your little program and basically cut out the holes. Or we would actually say, these are the holes we want cut it out. And most people would do line 10. Hello, me. I just leapt straight in and tried to do something. And you send these punch cards off, they would run them on their big mainframe and you would get some punch cards back to go, this is your result. Might take 2 weeks. And I had a recursive error. I got a box and they said, we stopped it because it wasn't stopping. And like, oh yeah, I can spot it. So, and that was always the thing, there was a big difference in scale. And, me kind of being buoyed up by this when I actually kind of entered the games industry, there was a bit of like, oh, actually, no, I'm back down the bottom again because there's plenty of people further up, and then it was fine. There's always, someone who's going to be better than you. And that just means there's another avenue for you to learn.
But did you actually have some time to play any games during this, or you just kind of dove straight into...
I played games.
You did? Oh, right.
Oh, well, it's... Yeah, again, the only way to learn, what do other people do? How do you do it? What's the inspiration? What makes a good game? Attack of the Mutant Camels, 1 and 2.
Oh, you have meant it right.
Oh, just fabulous games. Loved them. I liked Defender. But yeah, there is always that balance of, when you're a developer, you're always developing, where do you put the time in? And then if you do put the time in to play games, where's your life? So, I like, very small, tight games. Yeah. I had a Defender machine in my kitchen once, an original Defender, and oh, it's such a simple game. Doesn't take fantastic graphics. The feel of it, the slickness, and played it for hours. And it's great. And so the simple games sometimes are often the best. And one of the I think probably the best teams to have worked with for exactly that was the Wipeout 3 team. So I was the head designer on Wipeout 3. We were given essentially 9 months to do Wipeout 3. Brand new team, and it was whilst I was at Sony, you had everybody else going, they're going to be on PlayStation 2. You're going to be the team left to do the last PlayStation 1 games to carry us through this next Christmas. So we did Colony Wars 3 and Wipeout 3. So, I kind of gathered the team together, and we kind of sat in a room for a bit and went, we have to hit the deadline. There is no slipping. So what was it that people liked about Wipeout 1, Wipeout 2? What is it that we want to try and achieve? What do we want to make sure that we can kind of contain? And
did you have the old source code?
Yeah, we kind of had the old source code, of which, the devs kind of went, it's...
right.
It was code that was done for the original, launch, and then very, very quickly rushed for the next one. They did two great products. But for us to then kind of take that and do something again, we couldn't run the risk of kind of getting halfway through and kind of going, I'm not quite sure how this works. The code team, absolutely fantastic coders, started from scratch. Everybody kind of started from scratch, but kind of taking the essence and taking all the learnings that, this kind of experienced team had to offer. And, from the kind of the design team, trying to put that together. And we had, one guy called Mark McGinley, who he tweaked a lot of the variables to, as we air brake around the corner, what does it feel like? And, this was, from the coders, there was a guy there called Naresh Irani who, why is this value half of that value, and, doesn't count, and that the whole team kind of knitted together to kind of go, when we make a choice, why are we making that choice? What are we doing to improve the product? And the feel of Wipeout 3 was just phenomenal as you played it. And, I've done a lot of card games over the years, and card games is not, it's not me. But I've done a lot of graphics for card games, and with Wipeout kind of doing the corralling and coordinating the design on it. But it kind of really came down to the team and the different individuals to get the feel, and that's why it was kind of really good that we won a BAFTA for it, and it was nice to kind of be recognised. And I think from the feel of the game to the graphics of the game to the code work that had gone in to really push the place, because this was kind of the swan song of PlayStation 1, and to really kind of push the limits of PlayStation, it was just such a brilliant product and a great team to work with.
But what kind of tools did you use for the 3D graphics? Was that like 3D Studio DOS or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a Scuplt 4D was my first 3D package. That was on the Amiga. It was all right. It was good. Rendering took forever, and I remember sitting once with a guy called Rich Underhill as, we were waiting for, I think it was a screen for Armalite 2, and it was like pixel draw one at a time. And we sat there for about 3 hours just kind of chatting away going, oh, there's another pixel. But, it was fun. It was new, and it could do reflections and, a bit like, Flight of the Navigator, where, all of a sudden you're getting 3D and everybody's doing reflections, and, the movie kind of industry starting to adopt those same things in games. And the kind of the next tool really was 3D Studio. The first thing I did with that was the intro for Syndicate for Bullfrog. I went down, talked to Peter Molyneux, and I think it was Les Edgar, talked to the team, and they kind of went, well, this is kind of roughly what we did or what we're doing. So I took some of those concepts and kind of came back, and I kind of used 3D Studio in various, oh yes, this is a nice package, this is the next thing to move on to. Now with a kind of contract in hand, when, right, okay, so pretty much read the book. Funny story, read the book in the bath, made the stupid mistake of dropping the book in the bath. So, jump out, hair dry off quickly, because it was a thick book. So I would spend a weekend just going, right, I need to know is everything, back to front. And then kind of did that in a weekend, and then kind of 2 weeks later, the intro to Syndicate kind of popped out. It was kind of nice, nice to kind of have a bit of a free reign on what to do. So there was a few kind of pointers where they kind of went, we're kind of doing this for the Leonardo device. There was only like a rough sketch. And then from there, I kind of animated it and brought it to life, and thoughts on, the characters and the background. So yeah, just kind of put that together, was really pleased with the results. And yeah, that was my kind of first kind of proper use of 3D Studio Max. 3D Studio. The next thing we used was Wavefront on Silicon graphics machines. And Wavefront essentially is the forerunner to Maya. So that was the kind of the path. And it was, absolutely brilliant piece of software. One of the things that I like about Maya that I've never really got into Max. I've used Max, the period. There's some projects where people have said, have to be Max. And with Maya, you can almost do anything, anywhere, at any point in time. And you can be halfway through something and go, oh, and I'll just do this. And then come back and carry on. Whereas with Max, the philosophy is, well, if you want to do something, finish it and then carry on and do something else. And still today, I love Maya. It's the concepts and the freedom that you get as a designer is just fantastic to work with. I really started to get into NURBS when I did car modeling.
I can imagine, yeah, so much easier.
Absolutely. And then the issue was, oh, well, now I need to take it to polygons because it can't stay in NURBS. My method was draw curves and create surfaces from there, and then cutouts from surfaces, and then from there just control the polygons by then controlling how many control points across the curves. I went to great pains in everything that I did on. After I did the NURBS, so I converted it to polygons, then actually choosing on the quads which way to split that quad for the triangle. Because, I was forever very conscious of that. Take a highlight and watch the highlight move over the surface. So I'm forever kind of doing this all the time, just kind of going, no. And I take a vertice and just go, no, just pull it, no, no. And I'm watching the highlight, kind of going, no, that not happy. And I would just very, very infinitesimally move the vertices until I get the highlight.
So you don't have any formal art training, right? You just kind of got into this and learned as you went, right?
Yep.
Have you done any, used traditional art tools, or has it always been computers that you've used to create and express yourself artistically?
Well, no. I mean, as a kid, I would sketch and create things. Use Lego, get out the R-pad, sketch on the R-pad. Well, generally top of the class. For kind of art. Art has been, or kind of creative mode has been kind of part of my psyche from early on. But so's a kind of a technical bent. Wanting to know how things work, which is why kind of the coding or art kind of balances out. But when I really found computers, I started to put down my pen, and pick up the keyboard, pick up the mouse as the years go by. And I've had a yen to do oil painting, just never had the time. And, computers has always been a way I could express myself as quick as possible and undo when things go wrong.
What was the first commercial game you worked on?
Nice Games by English Software. When I started drawing graphics, I would do demo discs, and I would send the demo discs off. And I remember sending one off to Odin over in Liverpool, and had this little walking character who was kind of walking along, and kind of a bit Marvin the Martian style. And they loved it, and they went, yeah, great, come along for an interview. And then when this 14-year-old turned up, they kind of went, what? I went, well, I could do freelance work. And I went, no, sorry, we want in-house. But I got, letter back from English Software going, great, can you do us a loading screen? Here's the artwork we're going to use. Turned it around in a weekend. I believe they paid me £75, which for a 14-year-old was fantastic. And I was like, great. And they went, can we have, I can't honestly remember whether I did the Amstrad or the 64 first. But whichever way around it was, they then went, oh, can we have the other one? Because that was quick.
And at that point, you did have both an Amstrad, a Commodore 64, and a ZX Spectrum at home.
Yes, to have that flexibility was kind of really, really good, and to explore the differences,
and fight the Spectrum attributes, I presume, as well.
Yep. The colors on the Spectrum was something to behold. You had to be quite creative, and even with the 64, and it's where you can only have 4 colors per 8x8 block, but it's not 8 across because it's actually only 4 across because you've got...
the wide pixel amount, right?
Yeah, so you kind of go, well, if I have orange, blue, and brown in this one, but I want orange in that one as well, then and just tried to work out that was a bit of a challenge. Back then, pixel pushers, there wasn't that much that you could go wrong. As long as you kind of got it vaguely right, and the key thing was how to use a TV distortion properly. Because you could get that a bit more kind of relaxed approach to the art because the TV hid the mistakes. And it wasn't until you suddenly go to Amiga where the color spectrum goes right, 65,000 colors to choose from, that the pixel pushers suddenly went, oh, I could do 4 colors. It was interesting to watch those kind of formative years where the pixel pushers were challenged by the next generation, and you'd get some fall off, and then you get new blood coming in with kind of the new skills, and as that progression's gone through, as the games industry has kind of matured, the machines and the technology's matured, there's certain artists are still there today, still doing work because they've had that skills and the adaptability, and then there's those that at a certain point in time have kind of gone, that's me done. The technology is now beyond my skills to do artwork that people can appreciate.
Yeah, 3D tended to be quite creating that problem very specifically when that happened, when everyone was going for 3D modeling instead of pixel-based graphics. I think quite a few artists gave up at that point.
Yeah, and I think that transition point again in games where 3D came along, but because it was early, you still had to be conservative with the number of polygons that you used, and when I remember when PlayStation 2 came along, it's like, great, we can have 4,000 polygons for a lamp, and I'm kind of looking at the artist, kind of going, no, you can still probably only have about 20. Fine, you've only got 8 on the PlayStation 1, but it's not that much of a jump. Draw distances will want to be a little bit, so you've still got to husband every single polygon. And that's, I think when I was doing car games, I wanted accuracy. I remember doing a GT40 for Project Gotham 2. And, I counted the vents across the top. And made sure that, okay, there's that many vents, and then there's a gap, and there's that many vents, and so on the texture map, it's drawing the right number of vents. When people are playing driving games, they're playing it because the car that they love, they admire, and these are car nuts, and they know exactly what is the car. So whenever I kind of did 3D art, it was, if I'm doing something, it's got to not just fully represent whatever it is, but it's got to appeal to those people who really love this. In the same game, I did a Porsche Spider, and it's got leather straps to hold the bonnet and the boot on. So, and they're not textured. I actually made sure that as I built it, I had enough polygons over to build 3D leather strap. Because, I wanted somebody to play, it's like, oh my God, look, it's got leather straps. And it's that sort of thing that, makes what I call, and I've termed for ages, kind of the playground cachet, the talk that kids can go, I've got Project Gotham 2 and I'm playing because have you seen the cars? It's got it. And if you don't give people something in the gate to be proud of and to go, hey, look. So it's when doing games, it's not getting the graphics right, getting the coding right. It's also being able to put things in there that you kind of giving elements that people can share in the workplace or on the classroom to kind of go, look, have you seen these things? It's great. Give something for people to talk about. So there's so many things that go into making a good game. And, this is another part of it.
So have you got any artists or coders that have inspired you over the years that you feel are responsible in part for you choosing your path that you did?
Too many to name, really. I could go through teams. So Bitman Brothers, really good. Really enjoyed quite a lot of their early work. Speedball was just truly awesome. It was really good. Thing on a Spring, the music on Thing on a Spring was just insane from Gremlin. It was...
That's Rob Hubbard, I believe, right?
I believe so. Believe it was.
I think so.
A legend in his own time. Early games, Populous, was just, really good, kind of genre breaking. Yeah, it's that kind of style. And then I think the next one for me to kind of really break the mold and just make my jaw drop was Final Fantasy VII. From just such a visual fest, one of the key things that I'd always wanted to do and had challenged a few times. I was at Sony once, and one of the things that made me peep Sony was I had a certain very, very well-known person who will name nameless say, we want big bangs, big flash, we want, and that's like, and at the time, me and the team, we were trying to do something that was story-led and, kind of a whole mixture of things, but it was very much, and this is before a lot of these kind of story games have kind of come out now, really about the story, about the character. Something I remember, who did... there was a horror game. I can't remember the name of it. Silent something or other.
Silent Hill?
Silent Hill. I remember reading a review of the designer, and he really, I can't remember his name, but in the article, he was going on about how he crafted people's emotions. And in a certain way, when I kind of was going about my kind of games designing business and kind of going, I want people to go, he put it so much more succinctly, and I hadn't thought of it in the way he thought about it, but it was about when someone's here, I want someone to be here and be thinking this and feeling, and this was the important bit, feeling this. And then when they turn the corner and they see this from the story plot line back there, that they thought this, and now suddenly their emotions are going to twist to this particular bit as they kind of go, and spark them on this new journey and this new line of thought. And it was, at that point, that was kind of a pivotal point where it kind of go,
filmic approach, like what you would do on film.
Absolutely. And absolutely, that's exactly what you want. And I had lacked the words to kind of express this at that point. And when he kind of went through, this is how I craft games design. And almost on the next page was an American team kind of going, we want big bangs, big flash, and it's like, and there's a difference. And I know which one I would prefer. Yeah. And it's all about crafting that journey and, having people kind of come away and kind of go, I really enjoyed that. Now, whether it was Day of the Tentacle, a hilarious, absolute hilarious game. Very, very short, but it wasn't the point. I came away going, money well spent. It was a great experience. Laughed wholeheartedly all the way through. And so, after that's kind of the thing where I've kind of taken that forward and, always kind of, thinking about people's emotions and, and these days in kind of the corporate world where I am, and designing large corporate workflows, again, it's always thinking about the user. And when I walk away, the user's going to be left with this tool for years to come. And I don't want them to go, grrr, I want them to be going, oh, this is a joy to use. This does what I need. Same with people who have played any of my products. You want them to put a smile on the face. You want them to have, it's a really good time. And quite often through the years, many people have then found out, oh, you do games. Oh, no, that was a great game. Oh, no. And brilliant. That's the best compliment, you can ever have.
Yeah, I have one question that I've been thinking about for a bit now. Back in the day, compared to the coder of a game, as you being an artist, how did you feel the balance of how many hours you were allowed to spend was? I've got the feeling that often the artists and the musicians would get more time, relatively speaking, than the coders, which often seemed to be brought in late and sometimes working on several projects at the same time, often meaning that the product ended up being rushed in the gameplay department, whereas all the music and all the graphics looks great. And I mean, it's not easy crafting pixels or creating music, nor is coding. But why is it so often that the coding bit seemed to be failing a bit, if you know what I mean? How's your experience there over the years?
Really interesting question. Varied experience. So, say for example, if we take Ikari Warriors on a Commodore 64, the coding had already started before I did the graphics, and the coding was still going on after I'd finished the graphics. So, and this was all done remotely, and I was asked to do basically commission, go do the graphics. So I went down to the arcades on the seafront with my sketchbook, sketched what I needed for Ikari Warriors. That was the source. There was no other source. And I had the owners of the arcade, because there was jackpot machines next door, not liking someone there who's apparently taking notes. I'm like, I'm just sketching this. I'm not sketching the reels, so I can cheat the reels. So I did that, went home, did it, pushed it off, and then went, great, done. But the coding, before and afterwards. Same with several of the games where I was but a very small part of the kind of the game development plan. And all that might happen is say, I commission, I do the graphics, I send it off. And again, one of the things I was always doing is I kind of pitch myself is, well, if I was receiving these graphics, what format would I want them in? So make sure that the coder had as much material as possible to go PCs together and use them. There was always, okay, you've got 15 cells for this sprite. I need him to walk, run, jump, swim, play, do a plane. And I'm like, 15.
Right.
Really? So, try to be creative with what you've got. And, the same, I think that the first full game I did was Paperboy on the Amstrad. And again, there was a big roll of graph paper, actually. So I played the game and I made myself some kind of diagonal graph paper. I did have a full reel, and it went in my parents' living room. My parents' living room was about 20 odd feet, and it went kind of there and back again. And I played the game and kind of gone house, road, house, mapped it all out, did all the graphics, did it, and then so I could give the coder not only here's the graphics, here's the map. So from here you've got the equivalent of Amstrad. Of this character, this character, this character, this character, then this character, this character. So he didn't have to bother with that. Just like, there you go, done. Say fast forward when I was at Elite, the games there, the coding and the devs, so the art and the devs would pretty much start at the same time and finish at the same time. But what you'd have is you kind of split, because you might have an Amstrad 64, PC, Spectrum, whatever dev, and then say one or two artists, and you're servicing all of them. So, or like, for example, Boogie Boy. So Boogie Boy on the Spectrum. There was an original coder, and he kind of came in one day and went, I can't do it. He had some problems and said, just can't do it, and left. And Steve Wilcox is now going, I need the Boogie Boy Spectrum. Maz Spork, who was sharing a house with me at the time, he's a coder from Denmark. He had 1 month left on his visa before he had to go home. Maz and I kind of looked at each other and went, 4 weeks, naught to finish. Can we do it? So we pretty much did not sleep for a month. And, it was maybe 4 hours max sleep a night for 4 weeks solid. And we did it. We went, there you go. And Maz went home. And the game got released. And yeah, it was well received. Although, few people questioned the size of the buggy. I had a thought, we kind of, we could do this. And, it was trying to make the most out of the kind of specky color set. We could have made it smaller, but, we wanted it to be quite colorful. And I think there was a certain amount of, back then, you were doing code, not a game. And, there was some coders, well, I can put it in a box. It might play crap. They didn't care about it playing crap. Same as the artists. The artists were, it's a character. It was whatever. And, there's, over my career, I've seen a definite difference between people for hire. I will do a job. I will put it in. Don't ask me for love and attention because I'm not going to put it in it. You don't pay me enough for that. And that was a kind of a big thing. You've got those people who, I will put love and attention in. You treat me right salary-wise. And back then, there was no such thing as a decent salary. And then you've got those people who, whatever you paid, I will only pay you 2 hours a day. Fine, I'll still put 22 hours into the product because I want to make a good product. I want it to put on the shelf and feel proud of it.
That's where today's crunch problem comes from again. I think it's been like this in this business for a long time, I can imagine.
Yeah.
People that really care about their craft will put in the extra hours. And that is the same today, only that you've got teams of 100 people. And there's going to be crunch, of course. It's not a good thing, but I don't know what to say about that, really. I have very mixed feelings about it myself, so...
Yeah, it's not going to go away, and there are some products that you can look at and go, yep, we had, products where the timeline was pulled forward. And, it gets slated in the magazines because they kind of go, ooh, but what the magazine reviewer doesn't acknowledge that we had in a 6-month schedule, 6 weeks dropped from our release date, and that's a tenth of the time. And when you're kind of working on very, very tight deadlines as it is, you suddenly go, oh, we just have to put it in a box. It's been kind of sad to see again over the years where you can kind of see that this could have been a really great product had the developers had that little bit extra time. And it's not, the developer's fault. It's just that, someone said, we need a product for Christmas. That's the one for Christmas. It gets released. And again, products will remain unnamed. There was a company I was with. There was a product at Christmas, and it had a lot of A-class bugs, i.e. the game stops catastrophically. There is no recovery. And there was, release it. We can always update it after Christmas. And this was in the days where you're burning CDs. And it's just like, meh, whatever. We'll just send them an updated CD after Christmas. And it's like, the experience. And I think it's very brave of a lot of game developers where, people are waiting for the game and they say, yes, it's going to be ready for whatever date. And then all of a sudden the announcement comes out and goes, we're going to slip it by 6 months. And I think credit as well goes these days to a lot of publishers who, again, kind of go, well, no, we have faith in the developers to use the time just to put that love.
Yeah, it's becoming a rare thing, really, which is a shame that quite a few publishers refuse to play ball. We just release a product that is unfinished, and it's becoming horrific with certain publishers who shall remain unnamed. I think we can come up with a few of them, but they simply will force whatever out the door because they feel they have to. And then hopefully fix it, but sometimes they don't even do that. So it's, in a way, it's getting worse. But it's always been there, I feel, this problem. Even from the early days, from the early 80s, there's always been the need to finish a game within a certain hard time limit, and it's just getting more apparent now when the games are larger and the consequences are also far more devastating.
Yeah, and the costs for the end user, are so much greater. If you're buying a very cheap game and it's a bit buggy, well, it's a very cheap game. But when you're paying top dollar, and then when you're in there and you're being asked to pay more for downloads, coming back to nice games, you pick it up, you play it, you think, well polished, so much time and energy and love has been put into this. The game's balanced. It's again a skill to kind of make sure that you run the numbers, and there isn't that one item that you get that one item, game over, because you can just use that one item. And having that, everything has an Achilles heel, and it takes a lot of skill and it takes time. Having the team, and early games, it's a driving game or it's a platform game, and it's about making it as hard as possible. There was no crafting the experience and the gameplay, and kind of through the kind of the early 80s, it was just how hard can you make the game? How much of a no you got to go dum dum dum. I remember playing and it's a great game, Spyro the Dragon, and there was one little bit where you just had to be pixel perfect. If I jumped, it's like I can't do it. But it was fantastic, an absolutely fantastic game, and that reminded me of kind of the old early 80s games of being pixel perfect when you jump.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to see how short most of these hard old 80s games are. I mean, you can often finish them in a couple of minutes, but it's going to take you months and months to achieve the skill. So sometimes you can't even do that because they are basically impossible to finish.
But and I think it's a shame where when games are crafted like that you put all this effort in, and then only two people on the planet are going to finish it.
Yeah.
And that kind of pyramid style game, starts off wide, and it's the challenge. Who wins? The games designer or the end, or the level designer or the person in the end. And it's a shame when you kind of get games like that, and sandbox games giving you that chance to kind of play and explore and have the original games designers. I think Deus Ex were quite surprised when people could subvert the levels with putting the limpet mines on the side of the walls and then using them to jump up. That's also another kind of breed of game where you've got this sandbox area and here you go play. Yes, we're going to kind of direct you and kind of challenge you down a particular area, but then it's kind of so nice when you kind of go, oh, that's a bit genius. I really, really, really like that. And you might lift that out and use that in your next game.
Which game are you most proud of being involved with, both from a visual and playability standpoint?
Wipeout 3. It was such a great game to work on. I just worked on the designs of it, but the art team, coding team, design team, it was a just fantastic product to work on.
Any others?
Project Gotham. I did like Project Gotham 2. That I did, I think something like 54 of the 110 cars that was in that. And I did the last car as well, so the final car that needs to be unlocked, the Porsche GT1 Street, which I'm quite proud of. The back end of that was just horrible to model. They had these kind of fins that kind of came in and just looking at photos of this and kind of going, what on earth?
You didn't get a real car, so you could just go out and but so weak.
But funny story. Here we go. You love this one. So I lived in a village called Ponsbury at the time, and it's a little village in Shropshire. And down at the bottom of the village, and you're going to kind of walk down, and it says tiny village, single track lane for me. Either side of that, fields forever. I'm walking down, go to the local butcher, and he's like, what car are you modelling today? Because he's a bit of a car nut. I'm like, I'm doing a Shelby Cobra. And he went, I got one of those. I'm like, pardon? I went, yeah. And, took off his apron, handed it to somebody else. He said, come on. So we come through the back of the shop, and he goes to one of the garages. There's a couple of garages. Opens the door, pulls the cover back. Shelby Cobra. And I'm like, wow. And I've always wanted basically touch and feel. And what I've really always wanted to do, kind of from a modeling perspective, is VR headset and kind of sit there a bit like some, kind of Japanese warrior, like, yes, modeling the shapes. And to be able to touch and feel the car. And then, and I'd only just started it, kind of collecting some photos. So took more photos, had a look around, and then again, pour all that love into the car itself. It was brilliant. The only car I've had chance to kind of do so. But it was, after kind of modeling all of these cars, because I'd done Juiced, cars for Juiced, cars for Shocks, cars for Need for Speed Underground. And then, kind of did all of these cars for kind of Project Gotham 2. Out of all of that, the only time I'd ever actually got to touch and feel the car I was doing was a Shelby Cobra. You have to get rid of it. Apparently the police heard him coming. When he drove it, it was very, very noisy. And he was already several points on his license. And, it's like, I can't drive it anymore. My wife won't let me because, I will come back with points.
Were you ever involved in any unreleased or unfinished games? Do you have any interesting inside stories? Yes, please do tell.
Oh yeah, quite a few. Visual Science up in Glasgow, they did Armageddon, and they were doing a revamp of Armageddon. This was quite late on, so that they did was it on PlayStation? I think they did that Armageddon. Carmageddon. And they were doing, it had been a big gap doing it again. And I kind of got a commission to do some cars. So I was working with their designer. He'd kind of sent some sketches along. I'd built the car, send it off. Proper beat up wrecks and lots of, texture detail of rust and scratches and blood and things like this on them. I think I got 4 cars in. When the project got canned. I've heard through the years of various different reasons why it was canned. Someone didn't like the project management or the way the direction of the game was going. But I was just a work for hire, really, on that one. I think it was a shame, the designer who'd kind of come up with some of the ideas for the cars. They looked, really, really good, very Mad Maxy, but without the spikes. Certainly through the lens of the car sketches, it could have made a really, really good a good game for kind of what they had pitched. It didn't see the light of day. It wasn't transformed into something else. It was just stop, done. There was Game Boy Advance game, so a kind of Tamagotchi. They've got this series of books called Dragonology, Piratology, Egyptology, blah, blah, blah. The Dragonology one, which was, there are dragons, they're out there if you know where to look. I got commissioned along with a company called 6x9 to make a game. And essentially the idea was a kind of Tamagotchi. In the game, you would be the character, you would go round different parts of the world, kind of on the map, fight dragons, collect the dragons. So, and again, because of memory constraints, there was a lot of, kind of a static shot of a particular dragons. You might go to China, or I might go to Russia and Wales, pick up a wyvern, and taking their artwork, which was very, very detailed, turning it into a 3D model, rendering it as a kind of a cartoon, so we could have the kind of like, the 3 frames standard.
So it would be rendered, 3D rendered sprites, so to speak.
Exactly.
Pre-rendered.
So, yeah, but then that way, if we wanted to kind of do frame, you had this. Because there was one of them, the Asian one had tendrils and all sorts of whiskers coming out of it, and it was fun modeling. And we spent 6 months kind of putting it all together. We had an artist over in Sweden who was doing a lot of the kind of the pencil sketch work for the different tokens you could pick up. So I did the dragons, and he did the these kind of things, and it was great. And we pretty much finished it, had it in a box, and then someone went, no, the ROI doesn't work, cancelled, next. We don't think it will make a profit, therefore we're not going to release it, binned. That's kind of the kind of the major 2 that I remember. There's been plenty of wannabe games. You do some ideas, you might do some sketches, you might do a quick 1-level demo, pack your bags, go off to E3 and go, hey, no one's interested. And actually, to say this, I have remembered another game which this one's quite dear to my heart, actually. I don't know why I forgot this one. Jack the Ripper. So we were doing, this was with Ark, and this was at the very, very end days of Ark. We were doing a game called Jack the Ripper, but it's called Jack. And way ahead of its time, so story-led. So you essentially played a character trying to find who Jack the Ripper is in this parallel world. You had Victorian and steampunk, and vampires, werewolves, steampunk in a parallel world. So essentially, think vampires and werewolves did exist. Many years ago, they were pushed off into a parallel world. Jack the Ripper came through from this other alternate world into York, which is why no one could find him. Would come through, commit the murders, and then go back through. And then you were a cabbie, and one night out of the fog, this guy comes through covered in blood, and you kind of went, who are you? And he went, oh no, someone recognized, gave chase, and you saw him open a portal into this other world, and you basically followed him and went, oh crap. And very early on in the game, would get bitten by a werewolf, and you would have the kind of some werewolf abilities. But the more you use the werewolf abilities, the more you were in danger of becoming a werewolf and running off into the woods to capture sheep. So
losing yourself, so to speak, yeah.
Yes. So, and the first thing was you get bitten by a werewolf, fall down a hole, and you go, I can't jump up there, but if I become a werebeast, I can get out. Or I can go down this dark hole and find my way out that way. Do I want the easy route or do I want the hard route? But again, we had a guy called Patrick who put a lot of effort into helping write the scripts. We had a prosthetic studio who, what we were looking to do, we were still low polygon days those days, but we had a prosthetic studio who made the faces on a square, and we would have someone with their head through and would kind of full makeup, and the skin kind of mapped out like you were essentially a square. So, hey, that's a texture map, because it was a texture map. So then you would have someone go, hi, how are you doing? What are you doing? And look with their eyes, and we would record that, then use that as essentially a video map on a very low polygon head.
Yeah, I remember some games did that, but I think that was way after 97. So must have been one of the first attempts of doing this, I think.
And I think, we were the second company in the UK to get a motion capture studio. We had in Telford motion capture studio. In Telford, this was also where the prosthetics team were, and the team, when we disbanded, most of the team then ended up at Pinewood Studio. That was the level of which they were at. The whole approach to this Jack the Ripper game was very, very unique. So very story-led. We had the typical lava level, snow level, whatever. But that's all right. So some things did change. But the actual technical team, we had this one guy called Charlie who was doing the water special effects. And, looking back, you did not see the like until probably 2003, 2004 on the PC of what he was doing. And it's a shame, the product never made the light of day. And it was, brought about because Ark closed. You would see refraction. So you had lovely ripples, lovely reflections of the water, and the person's feet that would be under, they would be refracted. Absolute OMG. And, Charlie kind of went, oh, I've just kind of done this. What do you think? And I'm like, wow. And then, there was on the portal, some of because we kind of used that same water effect on the portal and had kind of glowing purple. And then we did the lava and the textures that some of the guys had done for, the kind of the lava level and then the rock monsters. If you have a lava level, you can have rock monsters. Had Jack, and I say this with all honesty, had Jack come out at that time, at the kind of the way we were going, it was one of those things in the same way that, Final Fantasy comes out and people go, oh my God, pivotal game. I honestly think Jack would have been that. We had such a great team had been put together, and the effort and the different technologies that we were bringing together with motion capture, with this, kind of say using the video. We didn't have mouths that could open, but again, the whole idea was we wanted story and emotion. One of the key things with the emotion was because you were part werbeast, we wanted scent and emotion to be a big part of the game. So you were talking to people, and again, these things kind of are now commonplace in games. Back then, so as you were talking to people, we wanted I'm going to just slightly switch on my werewolf spidey sense, werewolf mode, and the hue of someone's face might change color. If they're red, they're lying. If they're yellow, they were unsure. So you could kind of get a hint of, yes, he went that way, I'm lying. Yes, he went that way, I'm not sure. Well, they could be telling the truth. They truly are not telling the truth. Or it's green. Yes, I definitely saw them going that way. And so through that, this is again, I was kind of bringing the emotions in, or using the scent, so you could see a scent trail. So, I'm following someone where the scent of fear, but because you're using that power, you're now, you've only got a limited set of it. And, so where and when do I choose to use this reserve of power? And again, the kind of the gameplay mechanics, so we're really thinking about the gameplay mechanics, really thinking about the storyline. And I could wax lyrical. I still remember all the storyline. At some point in time, I'll write the book. But a game sorely missed from the repertoire of the gaming world.
And it wasn't finished in any way, shape, or form. That's not available anywhere, or
no, not.
How far did you get?
Essentially, the kind of first post. We'd got graphics together. We'd got the first kind of engine walking around. We'd got different special effects plugged in. We'd got the story pretty much mapped out. We had the voice recordings. There was one guy, Simon Greening, I think his name was, who was a famous voice recorder at the time. He did several of the voices, so we got a whole heap of audio recorded. So we had all the constituent parts. And big driving force on that. I cannot remember his name. A guy called Patrick, who had spent so much time going, well, from the story we'd kind of generated, this is the audio that we need, and here is the if you play this audio, or if you go down this path, then these are opening. If you play this audio, these are opening. Mapping all that out, we'd got several of the kind of the maps laid out, and the graphics were now being built. And unfortunately, the demise of Ark put a full stop on that game. Virgin was helping fund the game. So we went to Virgin, we got the prosthetics team to take a lunchbox and basically make it a Jack the Ripper. I'll send you photos because I've got one.
Awesome.
And essentially you've got Jack the Ripper's face coming out of this lunchbox, and you open it up, and it's all plastic, but red velvet on the inside. And then there's this comic book that we did. And the comic book was essentially the game's design and pitch. The best pitch that we ever did. We went down there, we had the idea in the boardroom, we got there first, we'd got some t-shirts printed out, Jack. I cannot find my t-shirt anywhere, but hey ho. T-shirt printed out, on the back, big piece of artwork, Jack the Ripper, just single color. Laid one of those over each of the chairs. We had 2 maquettes that were intricately made by the team, and this was the character, and you had essentially the 2 principal characters, you and Jack the Ripper. So they were, and one of the vampires actually was fantastic. So I got photos of those somewhere. So we've got those on the table, and then these kind of black lunch boxes in front, and of course they come through, they kind of sit down, and it's like, oh, t-shirt, a box, and it's like, oh yeah, whatever, give them whatever, done. Cost us 15 grand, which again at the time we could have done a game for 15 grand,
substantial amount of money.
Yeah. But that was the belief that we all had in the game, and when we kind of sat down and described the game and described what it was, we pretty much said it's going to cost you £1 million. And Virgin went, we believe in the game. Let's go. And it was not anybody's fault, but internal politics within the company that caused ARC to fold, and it was such a shame. Yeah, and who owns the rights is kind of up to debate. Really great team, really really good team, and it could have been an absolute fantastic game. It had all the right pieces.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I like the idea. And also steampunk meets like Victorian England and Jack the Ripper. I mean, and vampires and werewolves. What's not to love? I mean, come on.
Exactly. The T-shirts were black with, red Jack, kind of blood-splattered Jack. And in the back, there was a very noir kind of Jack the Ripper, big kind of steampunk specs, kind of looking down with his top hat. It was a very... you knew exactly what you were getting into when you saw it. The artists, on the team were just brilliant.
Did you ever put any interesting Easter eggs in any of your games?
Yes. Can I remember? No.
Okay. I was hoping you would remember some amazing ones that no one's heard of so far, but all right.
No, I mean, I remember... and again, I think it was on Wipeout, one of the coders there kind of going, oh, I could do this, secret level, and like make the screen go, it's like, why? There's some Easter eggs that you kind of go, yeah, it'd be great. And others is just like, yeah, why? It's like, because I can. It's like, okay. Possibly the only thing I can think of, it's not, it might be classed as an Easter egg, it might not be, the Porsche Spider I mentioned with the straps. If you could, and I don't think you could, flip the car upside down. Just under the back wheel arch, I put my signature on a texture map. But I put it on a bump map. So that when you looked at it, you wouldn't actually see my signature. And if they looked at the texture, they wouldn't see my signature. But the alpha map was used as the bump map. And on the alpha map, I put my signature on it. So if you took the car and were able to kind of do that, you would then see my signature, because I was so proud of that car.
I'm sure someone's going to do that right about now, so we'll see if anyone can find it for you.
Yeah, but I think, from an art point of view, that's kind of the only thing I've kind of put in.